Figuring out the hiring process is really important for businesses because going in and retraining and rehiring someone is quite expensive. So it's like the more that we can refine the hiring process, the more if there is a challenge later, it's like, well, if it can be fixed, let's go in and actually fix it.
Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this. And it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Do your employees sometimes drive you crazy? Well, today's episode is for you. We're going to chat about why this occurs and some ideas for how to fix it. Let's face it, you can't do it all, nor should you want to. But sometimes delegating and getting the results you desire doesn't always happen. I hear this from my clients, and it doesn't matter how much or how little their revenue is. I've found in every company, it seems to be an issue, so let's fix it. Carly Pepin is an international speaker and consultant with a specialized focus on human behavior. With a global reach, she delivers the message that regardless of one's background, occupation, or origin, every individual encounters personal and professional challenges stemming from their own perceived flaws. She emphasizes that the key to living a fulfilling life lies in how you utilize and transform these stories to actually serve you better. Let's meet Carly and see how she does it. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Carly Pepin. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Rocky.
Excited for our conversation. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So individuals come to me when they're looking to expand their own leadership within a company, try to clear any misperceptions, blocks, challenges that are preventing them from creating the business and even the life they want, right? So, just is what it is. Our daily life also impacts how we show up in business and finances. So that's also a real top priority when I'm working with someone one-on-one.
It's funny because when I bring on a new client, our first call is a 2-hour conversation, and we start with their childhood because things that happen in childhood that are unresolved show up in business 40 years later. And so by
100%.
understanding their belief system, their money habits, and how they view the world, it helps me to better understand what we're going to face as hiccups and where we're going to struggle in the business. And so I think that's a big part of it. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to chat today.
Amazing.
So in regards to the topic, right? If we're going to own a business, that basically means we're not in the business. We're able to step out of the business sense. That means that we've got to build teams. We've got to create the culture and the vision, and we have to kind of be able to step away and to delegate. One of the biggest struggles I see, though, is a lot of people have employee troubles in a variety of
Mhm.
different ways. And the question, well, so A, it's did you hire the right people? Did you create the right culture and message? And do you hold people accountable to what you expect them to do? I notice a lot of people struggle in that space. And I'd love to get your thoughts of how can we do this better?
Yeah, absolutely. And so there are a lot of different dynamics when it comes to employees with their productivity, engagement, and even hiring. So whenever I'm in a business and I'm even sometimes we help, when I say we, by the way, my husband and I do this together. So sometimes we help actually with the hiring process. When we dive into this, there's definitely the dynamic of someone having the right quality background, the right level of background that we're looking for. And that's great. But then there's also the dynamic of understanding their actual values and their life purpose. The reason why we want to understand that is because that's going to give us an indication of how this person is going to perform on the job. So, for example, if I'm diving in, just like I do with clients, I understand their life purpose. And if I dive in and we're hiring someone to be, a leader of a team, right? And it requires a lot of time and a lot of energy. And I see that their life purpose that has health and fitness, it's family, and it's travel, that shows me that this person is not dedicated to working in a company. This person is dedicated to their health and fitness, their family, and their travel, and they will prioritize business over that to a greater degree. If I actually look and someone for the same job has the same qualifications, but I look at their life purpose and it says work, business, that they love doing that, and that's their number one thing, I know that they're going to be the type of person when push comes to shove, and let's say on a weekend something crazy is happening and we need them in the office, they're going to show up regardless. Where the other person is that they're going to come kicking and screaming or make up an excuse because there could be health and fitness, family, or travel. So part of it as well is like understanding what's important to people and then putting them in positions that actually will align with that.
How do you really determine that? Like, how do you get somebody to say, these are my
Mm.
values versus those values? Because I would think, well, I mean, if you're a good interviewer, right, you're going to say what you want them to hear. I call it like dating, right? The beginning of dating, it's always the perfect story.
Yeah, you definitely don't ask the question outright because people aren't going to give you the answer. And most people don't even understand or know this themselves. It's not something we're taught in school. So we have a very specific set of questions that we ask. We have 13 questions that we ask to get very clear on exactly what their priorities are. And basically, we're just going through what their life demonstrates. And I mean, when it's my husband and I, we do this for a living. We're human behavior specialists. You can tell if someone's lying, so it just actually won't there's ways that we can tell in the questionnaire where it doesn't add up or match up, that you're like, something's awry, you're not telling me the truth, and we have to go back and kind of reframe it. So that's kind of the fun part about it as well. The questionnaire in itself that we utilize to get this answer also catches if they lie. So yeah, it's really helpful.
It's funny because one of my clients, they hired a company to do screening for potential new employees. He actually showed
Hmm.
me the dashboard, and yeah, they have to answer these questions. And he's like, they show you, oh, the resume says this, but here's what we
Hmm.
see as reality. And then they start saying, look, this person doesn't have the right integrity. Their answers aren't in congruence with what their experience on their resume shows. And I think for a lot of business owners, that's what happens. They see a resume, they ask a few questions, they like somebody, but they don't get the full story until 6 months later. And then now you have to get rid of somebody, which is another problem for them because the emotions of letting somebody go.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even the letting someone go dynamic as well, I know that it costs a lot of money too. Like that's a big expense. So even figuring out the hiring process is really important for businesses because going in and retraining and rehiring someone is quite expensive. So it's like the more that we can refine the hiring process, the more if there is a challenge later, it's like, well, if it can be fixed, let's go in and actually fix it. Because oftentimes it's worth retraining an employee or helping them out in the business to ensure that we're not spending that extra additional income on the hiring process. It is very time consuming, very expensive. So that's why it's so important to get it right from the beginning. And then, I mean, that dives into, like that was just one part of employees, but there's so many different aspects of keeping employees engaged and productive, right? And there is like that dives into the other aspects where how do we get our employees engaged? Definitely, again, in that hiring process, the more that you understand them, the more that you can put them in a position that's going to really align with them. Someone who does have a high value and purpose around family will probably thrive in a human resources type position, something where they're around teams, right? If they're really loving teams and stuff, because that's a family dynamic. So understanding those things is really helpful for them. If you have someone who loves travel and that's their purpose, and you have opportunities for sales and travel, that's where you pop them. That's like the best case scenario. You figure out ways where they can feel fulfilled by coming to work every day. Because we hear this quite frequently is that employees get drained, they're exhausted, we have to motivate them, we're bribing them basically with bonuses and all this stuff. And it's challenging. So as opposed to doing that, it's like, well, how can we create that inspiration from within? That's definitely one of the dynamics. And then also making sure that you're, aligning them with the vision of the company, that they understand it. If you don't understand the vision of your company and you're not able to explain it to your employees, how can you expect them to get on board? And so like having the things that we live by that are inspiring, and also boundaries. Like there's a short, you don't want to put too many boundaries in because it gets confusing, but have boundaries that also align with the vision of things not to do. And when you have that small list of boundaries, because you want to encourage creativity, but if you encourage creativity and they have no boundaries, they're gonna push the line. They're gonna go and step over the line, right? Because you didn't say they couldn't. So that's why it's really important to set those boundaries as well. And it's almost like we're creating a container for our employees to thrive and be creative in a safe way that still protects the company and makes sure that they're not going overboard and doing things that they're not meant to do that would actually affect the integrity of the company.
And I think these are all the things I hear complaints about: engagement, right?
Mm-hmm.
People not showing up, not being excited about what they're doing. I think part of that, it broadens on both sides. In other words, you have somebody who happens to be good at a couple things. They're in this job, but all of a sudden you start shoving them to doing some other things because you need it and they're good at it, but it drains them. And so we put
Mm-hmm.
them in the wrong seat
Mm-hmm.
and we create the problem, or we promote them or put responsibilities on them that they're just not in tune with. And yet they don't know how to say no. And we don't realize how much of a problem we're putting on it. And the other half is, like you said, the money part. I think too often we throw money at every problem. And I just reread Daniel Pink's book, Drive, and he talks about the intrinsic motivators and extrinsic motivators. And when you start to pay people above and beyond market, start doing things like that, you actually get worse performance than what you really want because of that. And it creates that sort of an issue. And you have to be careful because you will get what you reward. The question is, what are you rewarding for? And if you're not
Yeah.
careful, it doesn't turn out well.
And this is another dynamic with even employee reviews, right? Because it's super accurate. If you're just rewarding an employee and giving them extra for the sake of giving them extra, crossing your fingers they'll work, that's not going to happen. If they already didn't work to get the pay increase, they're not going to work when they get the pay increase. That's not how it works. So basically, like giving an employee review on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and going through it with your employee, what they did great, but also where they could improve. It not only helps you to give that feedback in a constructive way, but it also helps the employee to understand perhaps why this person next to them got the increase in pay and the bump in their promotion and why they didn't. And that's when they get to choose to either take that extra step to get the promotion, or they could choose to say, well, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to stay in the position that I'm at. Right. And employees genuinely, they like knowing if they're doing a good job. Like they want to know, like it just takes some nervousness off the plate where they're like, okay, I'm doing really well here, but I could improve here. And the other cool thing too is like by doing this, the people who are really inspired to grow within the company will start improving. And those are the people that it's genuinely wisdom to reward because they are taking action beyond their current job title naturally. And those are the people who are going to go into management, into leadership. And you give them the pay increase for it and let them know why. You're getting the pay increase because you went above and beyond. You did all of these things. And we want you to be in this position over the other individuals who aren't showing us that fortitude to actually move forward. Yeah. So when we think it's like, yeah, people want to do a good job and they want to hear about it. So, and also if they're doing a bad job, they want to know about it. And if they're really pissed off and they freak out, they're probably on their way to getting fired anyways. It's probably one of those people.
I think as I'm listening to you, though, it's like business owners are running around with their hair on fire half the time. They don't have the time to sit down and get clear on their vision. They don't always behave in accordance with their vision. And now you want us to do daily, weekly, monthly feedback to employees. It kind of seems overwhelming. How do we help them to
Yeah.
get the time to do all of this?
Well, this is part of scaling up, and you're not meant to be doing these components. So when I say to implement these, I'm also saying that someone else is meant to be implementing them, a human resources team. If you look at some of the greatest companies in the world that have been around for decades, they already have these practices in place. So when we sit here and say it's too overwhelming and I'm not going to do it, you're robbing yourself of the opportunity for your company to grow. These are time tested things that are actually put in place. So finding and getting help and assistance to make sure that this is manageable is key. Because if you think about you, and this goes right in delegating, which I know we were going to chat about, when you're delegating to someone, if you wrote down how long it takes you to go through this hiring process and how much time how much you make an hour, I'm going to guarantee that taking in someone else to do it is going to cost you a lot less and free up your time. And every hour that you don't spend wasting your time on something that you can delegate for less money is an hour that you have the opportunity to create income at your level. You're that visionary. You're the person who's leading the ship. I don't need you to be doing all the little bits and pieces on the inside. It's like asking like the captain to go down and fix the boat all the time. Like you can't do that. He's got to focus on driving the ship. So that's part of delegating. It's important for you to focus on driving a ship. And all these bits and pieces are bits and pieces that you're going to delegate to a greater degree over time. And if you're starting out and you're a smaller company and you're doing it on your own, then you start out on your own. And you start to work to make that happen. Because sometimes people think I'll do it when my company gets bigger. And this is where the problems really hit us later on, is because by the time you get bigger, not only do you you have less time to do it, you have less time to think about it. And on top of it all, your company's running in kind of a very hectic way. And it's almost like you're running as a startup with a larger company. And then that's why it seems like a shit show on the back end, because you just never put it in the beginning. But if you put the principles in place in the beginning, guess what happens? You just keep refining, expanding, refining, expanding. And then when you do hire someone, you say, here's the information. Here's the information. Here's what I'd love for you to do. And it actually makes training and delegating take less time and energy. Put the practices in your business now. It's important on any level when we're scaling up. It's going to save you a lot of energy and time in the future.
It's too late. At least for the people who listen to us. By the time they get to me, I think they've already built a certain foundation. And so now it's like, I'm in the midst of it. What do I do first? How do I deal with that in the midst of the situation? Because I didn't do it as I was building up.
Yeah. And this is interesting too, because it's like when I go into companies, either by myself or with my husband, it's finding out what's necessary for us to start to work on. And we just do one step at a time. And it's actually going to be unique for each company, because one company might be a lot more productive and efficient if we focus on a different area than another company, even though they both have gaps in multiple places. And so this is where, just like a person, where you go in and you work with a person, like you were saying in the beginning, when you go back to childhood's going to be very individual and unique for each person. And each person's experience and challenges are different. but also kind of similar. It's the same with business. Business is like a living, breathing entity. So we go in and we understand it to the degree that we can find out what's actually going on, where the gaps are, and which one would give the most bang for the buck first, because it takes some time to implement this stuff. This is why when you do, business consulting, it's not like a one-off phone call. Like this is often years in the making.
It's funny you say it's years in the making. Because I think a lot of times they think there's a simple, like a fast solution. And A, there's no fast solution, but B, it's an ongoing process because
Mhm.
even when you get the foundation, things keep changing, life keeps changing, people keep changing, and you have to keep working on it. It's a never-ending process, which is I think where people might struggle
Yeah.
in understanding that concept. Yeah, I don't know. What have you found?
Absolutely. I mean, you don't get from point A to L in your business by just having a quick solution. That took you quite some time and a lot of energy to get to that point. And if we look at what you did on the back end, you might have had a solution that sounded quick, right? We could say it quickly, the solution, but the implementation of it, the strategic execution of it, putting in the strategy, putting in the systems, and then refining that over and over again. We want to observe, refine, reserve, refine, observe, refine. That takes time. And it's funny because people look at great companies who again have been around for quite some time that are doing really well, and they think, well, because they do this, it's going to be easy for me to implement it. No, they spend a lot of time and energy on their systems, their strategies, their people, depending on the company and what's most valuable to them. And it's knowing that that time is important. That time is so important depending on your company and depending on what you're doing. The year, the 10 years, the decades that you spent on one simple thing is actually quite important. I remember listening to, I think it was the CEO of Marriott. I can't quite remember, but it was one of the executives, right? C-suite executives at Marriott. But they have a lot of focus on their people because the people are most important to them, because they want the people to connect with their clients and customers, and they keep refining customer experiences based off what their employees continue to share with them through engagement. So they really encourage them to come up with new ideas, get inspired to connect with people in very specific ways, how to create the best customer experience, and then take that feedback and refine their company. So their focus is massively on people. And so when we sit here and say, is there too much time you can spend on something? Absolutely not. Since this company focuses on the customer experience and they get that information from their employees, it's wisdom for them to be putting the time and energy there. And is it a 1 year thing? No, it wasn't a day thing. It's been going on since they figured it out. It's not going to stop either. And that level of refinement and continued education, knowledge, and I know they bring in experts to assist them as well. It's just like continuing to get it to grow and evolve with them as a company. It's really quite beautiful.
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around how the small business owner finds the time to do
Mhm.
all of this. And then the second half of it, I do realize that many of them, they compare themselves in the time they've put in. Well, they don't compare the time they put in. They just compare themselves to these big successful
Mhm.
companies and don't realize the time they put into these little things that honestly, the time you put into creating values or creating a good
Mhm.
hiring program, they're not direct line items on a P&L, right? You can see the results of them on the P&L, but you can't point to it. It's like you got to learn to read between the tea leaves, which is kind of what we
Mhm.
do. But I think that's where the struggle comes in. They all want to go,
Mhm.
I'm going to invest $10,000. I want to see a return. Show that to me. And this is not so direct.
Well, and here's the interesting thing too. So when I hired my first assistant, I didn't know about the stuff. I didn't put anything into place. And by the way, she's great. I lost a person that potentially could have been an amazing assistant because I didn't put these principles in play. So she didn't have any boundaries set up. I didn't have her linked to like a common belief system, right? I wasn't actually helping her to see how daily tasks, like we're supporting what's important to her. I didn't have these things set up. I wasn't doing the employee review. And funny, I look at this woman and I'm like, man, had I done that, I wouldn't have lost her. And I lost her because I didn't put the boundaries in place. And then when I started to, she was already too used to coloring outside the lines and I couldn't get the work done in the time affected. And so I thought, man, I didn't waste, obviously you learn a lot, but I like invested a year and a half in this person. And in the last, it was like about 4 months or so before I let her go, she really started to fade and I couldn't get her back on track. And I thought, had I just put this in place, this is one person that I could see could have potentially been with me for a lifetime. And I'm like, that's not her fault. It's not her fault she messed up. It's my problem because I didn't have the systems in place. And here is, I mean, a year and a half is a long time to have someone train them, get them used to your back end. And then when they're gone, what happens next? You do it all over again. The time invested in doing it all over again, if you keep doing it wrong, expect to have this cycle and turnaround. So that's why I say it's like every time, even when you're hiring someone else, it's like, okay, well, now I have a different process in place. And I'm putting in things step by step by step, framework by framework, so that I can ensure that I'm tackling these problems head on beforehand. You learn your lesson pretty quickly. And I know some business owners are probably listening and be like, I have similar problems with employees or something. And it's like, you learn that 8 hours or something that you spend understanding your vision, which often it doesn't even take like that long. Like there's a certain degree, sometimes it takes shorter time, or that time that you spend putting in like the boundaries, right? Or creating like employee reviews and just automating it so they fill it out. That time that you invested, when I think about that versus a year and a half, it takes so much less time. It takes so much less time than a year and a half. So it's like, why not just put it into place? And I know that some people are listening and like, Carly, I spent a lot longer than that on mine. And I'm like, great. That's why it's like, okay, spend the time in the beginning putting it into place. It's so much less than if you do it later. So much less.
And I agree with you, but I think for a lot of businesses, everyone's been coloring outside the lines for so long. Like, does that mean they got to replace everyone, or how do we get them back in the lines?
It depends. I mean, some people who are already coloring outside the lines, you're already trying to get them back in, and you have that one conversation with them and they switch and they shift. And those are the people you spend the more time on. But if you're continually this, she's great again, but I was consistently giving her feedback that you can't do this. This is not how the company works. Like you're falling, you're slacking, you're not getting things done. And she just wouldn't adjust, and after 4 months of sharing this information with her, if she's not going to adjust, it's all of a sudden becoming a waste of my time to continue these conversations, because my time and my hourly rate is not here to try to get you to hold you accountable for the job. After 4 months, if you're not going to do it, that's a long time. You're out, right? And so this is the dynamic too. If you're spending that much time on someone and they're still not shifting, yeah, it's probably time to replace them. But if you actually, and this happens a lot, when you have a serious conversation with an employee, sometimes you see them and they're like, whoa, I did not realize I was slacking off that much, but I see it now. I'm going to figure this out. If you see them start to figure it out and take action to adjust it, then that's obviously someone that you want to keep around and continue to invest in. So it's really reflecting on the person as an individual, right? And again, like you may be doing this now, but eventually you want your human resources team to do this. This is something that you want to delegate eventually, or even an assistant. When I was working for a small company, there was only how many in the office? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us in the office plus the CEO. So it's not many, right? It was a smaller company. And I was operations manager, but at the same time, I was kind of second to the CEO. And so everything funneled through me. She never saw a resume unless I approved it. She never even met with the person until like I reviewed all the resumes, right? So if you're an owner and you're sitting there and you have a small team and you're expecting to look through 1,000 resumes, that's unrealistic. She gave me a list of bullet points of what she's looking for. She gave me her yeses and her no's, so the boundaries. And I look at the resumes, I review it, and I'm like, this one, this one, this one. And she's like, meet with this person. No, because of this. She would tell me why it's a yes and tell me why it's a no. When you communicate in that way, then I got to refine it even further. And out of the 1,000 people that came in, she saw about 10 to 15, and we would find our perfect person. So again, it's like, get creative. If you have an office, and even if it's a small office, who can you get to help and assist you? Because even if it's not something that's normal to them, there's someone in that job. There's usually at least one person in the company that really likes working there and really likes working alongside you and wants more work to do and like thrives off of it. I was that person. So she used me to that degree, and it was wisdom for her. She took a lot off her plate, and then she focused on the vision, the mission, and then I helped her with all the bits and pieces, and she delegates. It's really important to learn how to delegate. You do not want to get stuck in the day to day. When she would get stuck in the day to day, I'd look at her and I'd be like, girl, like, you got to stop this right now. I'm like, you cannot be focused on this. Like, it's wasting time and our sales are down. So I was like, what can I help you with? So you could go out and focus on creating client connections, and then she just snap out of it really quick and she'd give me things to do. It's really important. Like, you're the blood, you're the heart of the company. You're the heart. If you're not pumping it, no one else is going to.
And yet I see them struggle in that space. And part of it is
Yeah.
letting go, I think.
Well, you're not doing this is also an unrealistic expectation too, that we do everything right. That's also a bit like, it's part of our pride as well, where we're having a hard time delegating because we're afraid something's going to get messed up. If you delegate and something gets messed up, your systems are not in order. And it's so crazy because we have these unrealistic expectations in a smaller business to not have the same problems in a larger business. But the larger business has just a different perception where it's just a norm. They have problems. It's normal. Like, they analyze their business on a regular basis. Amazon does this random analyzation of their inventory to make sure that they're keeping track and things are stocked accurately, and it's random and it happens all the time, and there's mistakes that they find on a regular basis. And then they go in and they're refining things and they're seeing what worked and what didn't work. Every time you see a button change on Amazon, that's a whole analytics thing on the background where people are spending hours and hours and hours, days and days, weeks and weeks trying to figure out which button you're going to push to buy more stuff, right? And so if a button is having a problem, they're going to spend sometimes a year on it. Like, Walmart is working to compete with Amazon's, I don't know if they did it yet, by the way, but I have a client who is assisting Walmart in competing with the one-click Amazon thing. And you have no idea how much time and energy they're spending to compete just with Amazon, because Amazon is one of our premier customer, they just draw us in with their business. Like, we all go to Amazon, and Walmart's trying to compete with that. You have no idea how much time and energy they spend on one button to make it easy for you to shop, because that's why we like to shop at Amazon, the way that they set it up. All this is going on in the background. Things are failing. Things are having trouble. People are having problems. People are getting fired. People are getting hired on a regular basis. There's chaos and order. And somehow you think that you're supposed to wake up in your business and not be stressed out and not have rough days and everything be perfect. Absolutely not. You're experiencing at a smaller scale what all these companies experience at a larger scale on a daily basis. The more that we get it, every time you have a problem or challenge, implement a system, a strategy, start to put it in place, and start to refine things. Business is refinement. Refinement. You don't have to get it right today. Just please try.
So how do we deal with that roller coaster of hiring, firing, refining, problem, hiring, it is a roller coaster. How do we internalize that and be okay with it?
So this is the mindset component that I love as well. It's one of the things that I work with the C-suite executives or owners the most is mindset. So when we're focused on mindset, we want to look at right now, if all of this stuff is stressing you out and you never want to do it, and you're listening to me and you're like, oh, I know this is like important, Carly, but I don't want to do it. Then what we want to do is we get a greater idea of what's purposeful to you. Because let's say health is the highest priority in your life. I want you to see how hiring and firing people serves your health. I want you to see how creating systems and structures serve your health, how every challenge that you go through that I'm speaking of actually is serving your health. If you have something else that's a priority in your life, maybe it's family, then we see how it serves your family. If you're not linking your challenges and seeing how all the challenges you have actually serve what's truly most important to you, you're going to back off on the business. You're going to back off and you're not going to do it. You're going to judge yourself. And this is where that comparison that you talked about, Rocky, comes in. Because, yeah, so much comparison comes in. You're going to look at someone else and say that they're doing such a better job. When I talk about it and I'm enjoying it, if something crazy goes on, obviously I'm really frustrated on the back end. Like, I'm a human being. You'll see me frustrated. I'm on a podcast. No one's pissing me off right now. And then at the same time, I really love this stuff. So if someone compares like what they're doing to what I'm doing, you're going to put yourself down. I already have this linked high enough that I want to do this stuff. I really want to dive in. I want to get into the grit of it, right? If you want to have that energy around it, it's asking yourself how these stressful circumstances serve you. And when you see that, you don't see them as more negative than positive. You want to neutralize it so it's an equal negative to positive, and then it's just an event. Just like in these big corporations, it's just an event. It's not a good, it's not a bad, it's just an event because they have a neutral mindset on it already as a group collective whole. We want to do that for ourselves personally.
That makes a lot of sense. So one final question. How do you manage the relationship between your husband and yourself and work? Because how do you keep it so it's not leaking into everything?
It leaks into everything. We don't have unrealistic expectations for it not to. I love my husband. He's incredibly inspiring, and we fight. We definitely fight, and we definitely have challenges. I don't want to sell a fantasy that we're some like rock star couple that never fights. It's no such thing as that. But understanding that you're going to get in fights, you're going to have challenges, and then knowing how to overcome them, that's been the key. So all this stuff where we talk about shifting mindset and perception about the challenges that we're going through in business, the things that I'm sharing with you, I've massively incorporated and applied to my relationship. And so is my husband. So that when we're having unrealistic expectations on each other as business owners, which any business partner, we have this. I know that any person who's living or experiencing this with a business partner as well knows that you guys get in confrontations, there's conflict. So we actually apply these principles to each other as well to ensure that we're moving forward, not only in the business, but also in the marriage. Because both of this, we love it too much to the degree where we're talking about it naturally on a day-to-day basis anyways. Not that we don't talk about other things, but to expect myself or him not to share things like this in a day-to-day conversation would be unrealistic. It's just too purposeful for us. So that's why it's like, okay, let's just figure out how to bring the two together in our own unique, inspiring way and work on our mindset when our perceptions are off and we judge each other.
It's funny that you say that. I don't know how many people are in businesses that they love and also with their spouse. So my wife refuses to work around my business. She's like, I'm not working with you, but we are both in the finance space. She's a CPA. So, having conversations around tax are just normal all weekend because we both love what we do. And I think that's a massive competitive advantage because when you love what you do and you focus on it, you're going to beat everyone else who, oh, I really don't want to do this. We're like, well, don't worry, we'll take care of it and more. And so I think that's a big part of it. And it's wonderful to see other people who are like us. If people would like to learn more about you, figure out how to get help from you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Best way is go to my website, carlypepin.com. You can contact me directly or just find my social media channels as well.
Well, cool. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rocky. This was inspiring.
I have this saying on my other podcast, Rich Your Soul, and it's usually that the answer to the problem is usually the reflection in the mirror. It's us. We got to fix that. What did you learn today that can help you take the first steps towards building a great team? Do you have your vision, your values, and what you want? Is it written down? Do you hire to it? And do you make sure that everyone on your team are in alignment with them? After all, we've got to model these. Throwing money at people causes more problems than it solves. So let's do the work let's face it, I know I hate doing some of this, so we can enjoy the rewards that we deserve. And remember, it's not about more resources, it's about being more resourceful, which is what that is, and remembering to focus on the bottom line.
If you'd like for us to be a part of your profitability journey, we have different programs available ranging from do-it-yourself to one-on-one coaching. Our course, The Profit Blueprint, teaches you everything you need to know to transform your profitability. There are 3 different tiers ranging from DIY to done with you so that businesses of all sizes can get the support that's best. Join the waitlist in the show notes to get more information and be a part of the next cohort. If you want a done-for-you service, you can hire us as your Chief Profitability Officers. We only work with a handful of clients, so they all get our full attention. We work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $10 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on our calendar for a good fit conversation to see if we're the right people to support you and how we can help you.
Remember to check out my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we talk about how to live the ultimate life and be the best business owner you can be. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.